In terms of taking forward what Joshua said from a product perspective slash a technology perspective, what we're envisioning to do and what we're in flight we're doing with Hitachi is very interesting. So I'll try to take you through quick because these slides are rather complex, but again, there's a recording and we can share it later on. But we try to enhance existing products and services that have been out there for quite a while that are typically Web2 oriented and make them Web3 enabled. And these slides are just a showcase to present that to you. So for the ones that are in IT and the ones that understand it, I mean, in the end, there's a lot of governance. That's what this central portion is all about access management to either digital assets or digital services that enterprises have for their employees. And that is usually something that is being driven by traditional username password, which we all use, which we all know that we take shortcuts. We take easy passwords. We take our spouse's birth dates. We take our pets' names. I mean, all sorts of things that we might remember it and that it's easy for us. And again, DigiCorp Labs has some really interesting technologies that make that, again, Web3 inspired, a lot more difficult and a lot more secure. And those items we have molded into a way that we can actually bolt onto existing Hitachi solutions and make them better, because they sometimes, in some guises that they have, still use traditional username and password. And this is traditional way of doing an enterprise security system with username and password security. If we take that forward and enhance it with what we have an application that is on a mobile device of a user, of a consumer, but also of an enterprise user. And that actually allows us to enhance the existing security that sits embedded in systems with cryptographic access. And we've developed an enterprise version of the DGMV ID app that will enable non-custodial, but then non-custodial works for consumers, but custodial works for enterprises. So a custodial version of that app will be able to manage private keys for enterprise workers that have access to systems or need access to systems. And we're able to create a two-factor authentication mechanism without changing the core technology that has been out there for decades, that has been certified against a lot of standards, and that has proven its worth. So we've built the DGMV IAM bolt-on solution that enables Hitachi products to have two-factor authentication without actually changing the Hitachi product. And this has been tested, this has been presented, and this has been certified by Hitachi as a very well and welcomed solution towards having an existing solution that does really well in the market for storage that is now enhanced with security. It also allows, at the top of this slide, to actually log those authentication requests in a blockchain, which is also very much Web3 and is a very good way to store actions and to create an immutable record of what has happened with systems. And again, this wasn't on the roadmap of any of the Hitachi products to date. We've created it as a bolt-on solution for these solutions, and it's been very good in that particular partnership, and is really excited them to work with us as a ISV. On that same note, having the ability to take general logs, because I spoke a little bit about two-factor authentication and activity logging of that, but you can take that same technology stack with Smart Layer and actually take any application or any storage logging that comes from existing enterprise systems, because the whole gameplay here is not to lift and shift technologies, because that's really, really hard with traditional enterprises. But what is really well possible is actually to create enhancing solutions without changing them and without affecting them too much. So the Smart Layer is able to take existing applications and existing storage solutions, take logs from activities on those solutions, whether it's a login or whether it's a change to a file or an object, or whether it's actually accessing a service of an application that is being presented by an enterprise to employees, and taking those logs and putting them almost like in cold storage, but then not actually having that data being put in cold storage, which makes duplications of that logs, but actually just stores proof of what the original data is by the means of hashes. And then with those hashes, you will create an immutable record of proof in terms of have the stored logs being tampered with or not, which obviously is already enough in case of an event, in case of an attack, in case of a breach, to actually start doing your reconnaissance and start looking into what actually happened. And that has been welcomed really, really well. And we're taking very good inroads into the Hitachi product portfolio to start enhancing that.
Maybe to add to that, the enterprise interface, what you, as example, you can use is also Splunk, Reinhard. For people.
Definitely. And again, we're not lift and shift and replace. This is bolt on and presenting proof in a very Web3 manner next to all of the existing solutions, because what is really sticky today with the enterprise solutions and the enterprises is that they want to stick to what they have built over the last decade in terms of building up their governance and building up their structures, right? So lift and shift and trying to replace is a very hard task, but enhancing what is already there with a layer of enhanced security is something that is really welcome these days, because it is a very complex world and it is a very complex setup of systems. So this particular one speaks about the smart layer in general, where you can also use that to take existing data sets that exist in many enterprises where there's a lot of privacy concerns these days about data, which means that very good data that exists in enterprises cannot necessarily be easily used for machine learning within that enterprise or within that industry. Now, taking data sets that exist in enterprises, and again, that are stored on storage systems, again, predominantly because of the partnership with Hitachi today, and making them anonymous or pseudo-anonymize them into a data set that is representing the real data, but it has been anonymized. Storing proof of the relationship between that original data and the pseudo or anonymized data set is all you need. You don't necessarily need the match between a name and a anonymized version of the name. You just need to prove that those data sets were created on a certain point in time and at a certain point in terms of that exactly data set that was replaced. And then you store that proof again as a hash in a blockchain, which is enough to make machine learning possible on anonymized data sets without a risk of exposing it, because you throw away as soon as you can that key that links the original data to the anonymized data. And once you get rid of that key file that actually enables the relationship between the real name or the real data and the anonymized data, you just need to prove that there was once a point in time that data was anonymized. And we can do that. That is what blockchain brings. That is what hashing brings. That is what that core technology brings. And we are very close to making Smart Layer do that and actually help enterprises to use their own data for their own benefit for machine learning to get better at being ready for the future.
And machine learning for most people is actually also what AI is. So we validate the data. Actually, we create the data sets, validate the data sets for machine learning and AI. And that's one of the most important things, because the data has to be validated and corrected. And that's what we actually do to that. And then we store the metadata in a metadata vault. That's what Hitachi does. So to give you another, and then we hash it on the layer one. That can be like Digibyte, or it can be Bitcoin Cash, or another blockchain. We are blockchain agnostic. Of course, we promote Digibyte because we come from the Digibyte community, and we think it's still there, but it's up to the customer to decide what they want. And I think that is, I think, a very important thing to do. Why not? Next one.
Yes, I think this is a repetition of of the one that we already saw. So again, this is about logging and Splunk. I think I made a mistake in terms of putting the slides in and having that smart layer. But the smart layer is there to take data from an enterprise and actually create proof of its existence, proof of its authenticity, and proof of data ownership over and over and over in many different shapes and forms. And we're only at the beginning of making that smart layer do good for enterprises. We're obviously currently also really listening to what the market wants and what the market needs. And we've got some very good advisors and very good people that help us to understand that, to take this to the next level and to take this forward.
To make it smart for the community, what it means is actually that we want to be the one that validates the right data for AI. And that's a big thing, believe me. It's a very big thing. So the potential for the DGMV smart layer, I also call it digital governance metadata validation layer. And that's what the smart layer does. So we make actually the data ready for AI and for compliance reasons. We also make the data ready for monetizing. And that's very important for a smart city. Everybody has to give their metadata to a data exchange, but need to validate it. And some people want to monetize that data. Also, in the future, you can monetize your own data by sharing that and say, okay, I've been there somewhere. So to able to do that, what the smart layer do is really big. And people, I think not a lot of people understand that it is actually just a little bit like Oracle does for Chainlink. So we are in potential can have I compare us sometimes internally with Chainlink, because Chainlink is an Oracle that inserts data. We are a validation governance layer that validates the right data for AI and machine learning that are the basics for all the smart city, IoT, cyber resilience, and the metadata vault. And that is also very big. So the potential, especially in the IT world, people get it. In the community, perhaps in the Web3 world, it's perhaps too technical, but it's about real use cases. It's not about meme coins. It's about real technology that go out there. So that is something I want to emphasize. That makes it a lot. And I think that's also sometimes difficult for people who only are used of hyping, and this is really adding to productivity and adding to security and cyber resilience.
Thank you for that, Joshua. So with that said, the last pillar of where we focus is to also do what we are using right now. We all meet in digital ways in many different shapes and formats, but with AI rising, it's going to be more and more important to be really able to validate whether or not a real person is participating. And that has become, and there's plenty of examples out there, more and more difficult. Today, maybe not in video yet, but even though the first examples are there, but voice, certainly there have been AI participants to calls that have been validated by people as being authentic and being the real person that participated. And that's just a fact that we have to deal with. I mean, I love progress. I love everything that is happening, and I think it's great. It's a big force of enhancing everybody of us, but it's also being used in the wrong ways. And we're really pushing forward for solutions like this, where we do communicate with each other in a digital manner, where we need to be able to prove provenance, and provenance in terms of me being me and you being you in participating. And an image is no longer a telltale sign of a person really participating in it, because that is slowly but surely going out. So we need to have these Web3 inspired ways of actually starting to prove that we participate in these meetings. And again, like we said already earlier, we've got a perfect way of doing so with an app on the phone where there is a private key. The private key is being managed by individuals, either in custodial or non-custodial ways. And they can prove by having that private key and by signing in, literally signing in to video conferences with that private key, to participate as the real deal, as if it is a transaction on any of the current wallets and current cryptocurrencies out there. that this is a valid transaction. The future is that this is a valid participant of a digital communication means. And all of those things are very valid in the world of cryptocurrencies, but they can be transported into the world of digital services that are being used by consumers and enterprises. And that's what this is all about. That's where Secure Meets comes in. That's where we will enhance existing video conferencing solutions with those digital means to prove provenance and authenticity of participants. Also, and again, these are the last slides. We currently use a lot of services in our private, but also in our business life, which are very centralized, which are being operated and brought to us by big companies, by big centralized facilities, which always opens up the question, like, is there anybody else listening into what we do? And again, in the world we live in, I think projecting forward, we need to really looking for solutions that are back in the hands of us as individuals or as companies, where we know that this conferencing facility that we use is operated in a way that is truthful to promises, that is truthful to privacy, that is truthful to its participants, a way that participation can be controlled by digital means. Again, private public key pairs being a starting point of really enhancing the security of also participating in these calls. And that's what we're doing with Secure Meet. It's a means to allow people, individuals, small and large organizations to operate their own facilities inside their own enterprise, inside their own premise, but also using publicly available services in a secure way. And again, I don't want to overwhelm you with technology speak, but that's the product update that we are wanting to bring forward in this AMA, and I hope you got inspired by it and it made you think about what we do in a very positive way. So thank you very much for your